Hey, my name is Nick Reese, and today I want to talk to you about web hosting. For many, web hosting is one of the most confusing parts of getting started online. My goal is to help solve that. Back in the day when I first started, there was no really good resources or videos that would help you just decide what you needed. Really, it took a bunch of time researching the difference between shared hosting, VPS, and dedicated servers. I really had no clue. My goal today is to help you understand how to better make a decision for your web hosting needs. Hopefully you found this video on your first time when you're looking at web hosting, because really I think it'll make a huge difference. For those of you who have more experience with web hosting, at the end of this video you'll also find awesome tips that you need to look for. So if you want to fast forward to that part, do so right now.
You're watching The Basics of Web Hosting by Art of Blog. So you might be thinking, what the heck is web hosting? I've heard of it, but I really don't know what it is. Basically, every website needs to be hosted. Now, to have a website hosted is nothing more than having a computer that retrieves a web page and shows it to a visitor on a website. The site you're looking at right now is being hosted, and that's how you're able to see this video. While you could run a website off your home computer, you wouldn't be able to do much else. Computers that host websites are like your home computer, but they have top-of-the-line hardware and slightly different specifications. Simply put, this computer, also known as a server, determines what pages you're trying to view, runs any programs necessary, and shows you the page you're looking for. A server is very much like a waiter at a fancy restaurant. In both cases, each must figure out what you're looking for and deliver it to you. Too bad everything isn't that easy. Just as a waiter might ask you questions to help you make an informed decision about what to order, a server sometimes needs to figure out what you're looking for too. To do this, servers run programs. Essentially, these programs are nothing more than instructions the computer needs to follow in order to find out what you're looking for. They are often passed information behind the scenes that you may not know about. These programs are often called scripts. Just as an actor needs to stick to a script, so does the server. And just like actors can play different roles in different movies, servers can be flexible as well. Most scripts that servers run can be dynamic in nature, allowing them to act differently in different situations. Let's take a look at how this might work. Take, for example, an online shopping cart. Everyone has used one of these and understands that they are pretty flexible. In order for a shopping cart to work, the server needs to know what items you're trying to purchase before you can buy them, right? Well, in order to tell what items you have selected, the server will need to run a script. When the server shows you the page by reading a program, it is really creating these pages based on the information it's given. Let's say, for an example, you wanted to add a coffee mug to your shopping cart. The server will run a script and instantly generate this page showing you the coffee mug in your shopping cart. As you might have guessed, this page would look differently if you added a golf club to it. A shopping cart is a perfect example of a dynamic page, as it works differently based on the information that it is given. To sum it up, dynamic pages are kind of like chameleons. They change based on their surroundings. Sometimes they need to show you a coffee mug, and other times they need to show you a golf club. Believe it or not, most websites on the internet are run using dynamic pages. And there you have it. We've covered the basics of what a server does and what web hosting is all about. When it comes down to it, you have a server that serves pages, and sometimes it needs to run a script or two. Now let's delve a bit farther into the web hosting equation, but before we talk about the specifics of hosting, let's talk about what we should expect from a good web host. Choosing a web hosting company is a vital step in launching any successful website. First off, just so we're clear, a web host is nothing more than a company that runs a server, preferably a few hundred servers. After all, we want to be hosted with a reliable host, not just someone running a server out of their basement. First and foremost, a good web host should be reliable. This is pretty easy to understand, as anyone that visits a website actually wants to see the website they're trying to view. So a good web hosting company should have very high, if not 100% uptime. Uptime is just a measurement of how often your website is available for people to see. Now, you may be asking, why would a website go down? Well, let's just say servers are known to have occasional hiccups. Well, we just don't want our sites to be affected when they do. Now, the other thing that makes a good web hosting company is their support. Since good is a relative word, good support is defined as the support that you can get in touch with when you need it. Good web hosting companies will definitely offer email support and sometimes even phone support, so check around. And there you have it, reliability and support. These are the two main points that make a good web hosting company. However, customer service really makes or breaks your experience. Many hosting companies offer good uptime and reasonable prices, so customer service is really the only point of differentiation in the hosting industry. That said, we highly suggest finding a company that has great customer service that you want to work with instead of basing your decisions solely on price. In no other industry is the saying you get what you pay for more true than the hosting industry. You will want a company that will be there when you need them, especially if you're new to web hosting. So focus on choosing a company you like and then take a look at the price. Now that we know what makes a good web host, let's take a look at the types of hosting available to us. The first type of hosting you need to know about is dedicated hosting. This is where the entire server is dedicated to you. You would use one of these if you run a very successful website or a website that needs a lot of processing power. This is the top tier of hosting. It is expensive, but the server is dedicated to you and your needs. Whether it's hosting one site or hundreds, it's up to you. Essentially, this is like driving a fast red Ferrari. You can go anywhere you want and drive as fast as you can. This is the easiest to understand because you have the whole server to yourself. Since you probably won't start out on a dedicated server, let's check the lowest and most accessible form of hosting. This type of hosting is known as shared hosting. This is where you share a server with other users. The amount of users really depends on the web host, but you could be hosted with 10, 100, or 1,000 other users sharing your same server. Think of it this way. If a dedicated server is a fast red Ferrari, then shared hosting is like riding a crowded bus. Your experience is solely dependent on the people you share the server with. If you have one unruly person riding with you, then your entire experience could be ruined. This is true with hosting as well. If one person runs a script, it could crash your entire server, leaving your site inaccessible. Ultimately, you should only think of shared hosting as a solution for static websites or small websites that run scripts. Now, considering you probably fall somewhere between total noob and professional when it comes to your websites, you are probably interested in a solution that fits your unique needs. Fortunately, over the past years, hosting companies have devised a hybrid solution. This new solution is known as a virtual private server, or VPS for short. Essentially, a VPS solution is an efficient network of computers that work together instead of individually. In this hybrid solution, you pay for a customized setup that meets your specific needs. Better yet, you can upgrade or downgrade at any time if your needs change. The best part of a VPS is definitely the virtual and private part, meaning that you're the only one that has access to these resources that you're paying for. To keep up with the transportation analogy, using a VPS solution is like owning a car that can be upgraded or downgraded at any time, without taking a hit on depreciation. Wouldn't that be nice? You can take this car anywhere you want. And if your plans change and let's say you had a kid, you can upgrade it and go trade in for a larger car. Or if you hit your midlife crisis, you can downgrade and get a convertible. Using a VPS is like taking a dedicated server and allowing each user to have access to only the resources that they need or the ones that they're paying for. No one has access to your part of the dedicated server besides you. A VPS solution really allows you the flexibility of shared hosting with all the benefits of having a dedicated server. This is the solution that tech-savvy customers choose. Now let's take a look at resources in general. Basically, there are two major things you need to take into consideration when determining how much power your website will need. First, will your website be running old-fashioned flat HTML files, or will they be running dynamic pages that we discussed earlier? If you remember correctly from the beginning, a dynamic page is something that uses a script to create the information that is shown on the web page. An example of a website using dynamic pages would be anything using WordPress or another content management system. If you do plan on using these content management systems or CMSs, you'll need more power than a site that just runs a flat HTML file. The second thing to take into consideration, and this one builds on the first, is are you running any scripts to build your website? Basically, to process a script, a computer needs a brain. For those of you smarties out there, we're talking about RAM and CPU. These are the two components that make up computing power. Depending on how large your site is and if you're running dynamic pages, the more calculations the server will need to create these dynamic pages and serve them to your visitors. These calculations all take time, and for each calculation the server might take longer to serve the next page. This may cause your website to load slower for the end user. That said, the more resources you have access to, the faster your site will load and the more visitors your website can handle. Now, to understand how resources work on different hosting packages, we're going to take a look at the difference between a shared server and a VPS server. Now, if you're on a shared server, you have limited access to the server's RAM and CPU. This is the processing power on the server. After all, these resources are shared with other people on the bus. Server. This means how fast your site loads is really dependent on what other people on the same server are doing. Let's contrast this with what you might experience with a VPS. With a virtual private server, you can rest assured that the resources you have access to are all yours. Your site will never be slow because someone else is being greedy with the system, or if your needs change, you can always scale up and down. You really have access to what you need resource-wise, whether it's bandwidth, storage, whatever it is. This gives you the flexibility to grow your site as you wish and not worry about having to switch hosts down the road. Now that we have a handle on why computing power is important, let's talk about the different resources that you need to look for and what each accomplishes. Most hosting companies will throw a list of 100 different things at you. Right now we're going to cover the 4 most important things, and then we'll cover some of the others at the end of the video. The first is CPU and RAM. As mentioned before, these govern how fast your computer can process script and serve files. These two go hand in hand. The CPU can be looked at as the brain, and RAM is really just the memory. The second resource you need to worry about is bandwidth. This is the amount of information your server can transfer to people looking for files on your website. If you're serving static HTML pages, you will use fairly little. If you're hosting images, you're going to use more. But if you're playing movies, watch out, you're going to use a lot. Storage. This is measured in gigabytes. This is typically the amount of space you have on your server. As you might have guessed, it works like it does on your home computer. If you have hundreds of pictures or home videos, your space fills up quickly. This goes the same for the server. Now these are the basic resources you should be looking for when comparing hosting plans, but you're probably still asking, well, how much do I need? Well, because everyone's situation is probably different, we're going to give you some general recommendations for those of you looking to buy a web hosting plan. Remember, these are just general recommendations. Use your best judgment first. So if you're a total beginner, we recommend that you go with a shared hosting plan. This is good for getting your feet wet, but you better not be doing anything serious web related on them. This will satisfy most of your needs, and down the road, if you need to, you can upgrade to something more serious. Definitely check and see if the hosting provider you choose allows the option for you to upgrade to a VPS or a dedicated solution, just in case you hit the big time. Whether you're serious about making money online, becoming a professional blogger, or professional developer, or anything in between, you should really jump on the VPS option. Though this option does cost more than shared hosting, it should be looked at as an investment. Let's face it, we're running a business online, and this is pretty much the cheapest business you can get into. Heck, it might even be cheaper than selling lemonade. I suggest you look at the cost of using a VPS as part of your overhead or cost of doing business. If you're upgrading from a shared server to a VPS, you will definitely notice a difference. The best part of a VPS should be reiterated. That is, that you can scale up at any time. So if your needs change, you can change your hosting options too. Long story short, get off the bus and get your own car. Finally, we're going to talk about dedicated servers. If you're looking at this option, you probably already knew most of the stuff in this video. Most websites won't need dedicated servers unless you're doing something extremely complex programming-wise or you have a ton of traffic. The best advice I can give you for a dedicated server is to shop around and find a company you want to work with. You might also try negotiating a better rate or even buying your own server outright and paying to have it hosted at a hosting facility. If you do buy your own server, make sure you look into managed solutions because unmanaged can be an outright pain in the butt. As a final piece of advice, before we jump into the bonus section, remember that with web hosting you get what you pay for. The hosting arena is pretty darn competitive. Looking at the lowest price competitor probably means they're cutting corners. Pay the little extra and go with a reputable company with outstanding support, especially if you're just getting started. Ding 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 ding! Bonus round! Here are the helpful tips that are slightly outside the scope of this video, but are helpful nonetheless. First, choosing a web host. When choosing a web host, look for a support phone number on their website. Try calling the support phone number, and we recommend you ask them a few sample questions. If they're friendly, they'll probably be friendly when you need them. First, I'd ask, how do I install WordPress? Can you walk me through the process? Second, how do I set up my email account? Third, how often is my site backed up? If you can't find a number, every web host should have an email address. So shoot them an email and a good web host will respond within 12 hours. Another quick trick I learned when evaluating web hosts is to look at their copyright date. If the copyright date is outdated, they're probably not going to pay much attention to your website. But if you find a copyright date with a long time span, great. Many of these companies will have an outstanding reputation, or at least a reputation you can check into. Shared hosting. Pricing. When comparing pricing between hosts, realize that to get the lowest rate, you often need to pay 1 to 3 years all at once in advance. Make sure you factor this into your budget. Furthermore, don't be enticed by the unlimited or near unlimited bandwidth or storage limits that come with many of these hosting plans that are out there now. By the time you need all this bandwidth or storage, you'll likely run out of processing power or hit some nasty bandwidth throttling limit. VPS hosting is often sold in nodes. These nodes are kind of like portions of a server. The more nodes you buy, the cheaper they will be. Keep in mind that it's very easy to upgrade, so shoot for exactly what you think you'll use. An upgrade is needed. Beware of lower end dedicated servers. Cheap dedicated hosting is not nearly as good of a value as it looks. Often these servers are cheap because they run on older machines that have a tendency to go down more often. If you're looking for a cheap dedicated server, go with a similarly priced VPS. Furthermore, if you do decide to use a dedicated server, make sure you get a managed dedicated server, as there's a lot of work that goes into managing a server, and most of this will probably be over your head. If you're to go with a dedicated server, bite the bullet and get a managed solution. Here's a quick list of must-haves that every single web host should offer regardless of the package you choose. Some will try to upsell you on these, so make sure that they're included, because in all honesty, they're just another moneymaker for them. So make sure that these three are included. First, you want access to host unlimited domains. Second, you want access to unlimited email accounts. Third, you want access to unlimited MySQL databases. Okay, now let's talk unique IP addresses. If you're serious about a website, you should probably get a unique IP address for it. Besides the debatable SEO benefit, who wants their site to be hosted alongside adult or other iffy websites? Bite the bullet and go for this upgrade if you can afford it. Just as an FYI, most VPS accounts should include at least one unique IP. Now, I know some of you have questions about what operating system to choose. Really, it's up to you. Keep in mind, just because your home PC runs on Windows doesn't mean your hosting solution has to be on Windows as well. However, there is one caveat. If you're going to use .NET or ASP to develop your website, you will need a Windows solution. Otherwise, Linux might be your best bet. Now, most hosting solutions will offer some sort of management panel to help you manage your service. cPanel is most often used, though some web hosts have their own in-house platform. If the host has an in-house platform, make sure that they have easy installation of WordPress or other content management systems and shopping carts that you want to use. If the company uses cPanel, then it's included via Fantastico. And that concludes today's video. If you're still looking for recommendations, please check after this video in the blog post. You can find it at artofblog/hosting. Here you will find recommendations for different hosts and ones that we have worked with in the past. Hopefully this video has been informative and now you can make informed decisions about your web hosting needs. Thanks for watching.